you're not 14 years old, or 84 years old for that matter, then yeah, that's a little suspicious, and in this case on the spectrum, it pushes you a bit to the right. Have you ever noticed how a lot of like long-term steroid users, they all kind of end up looking like almost kind of similar? Like after 5 or so years, a lot of them end up balding or bald, and yet with like a really good thick beard. This can actually be directly attributed to anabolic steroids, namely those which are DHT derived or which convert into DHT, such as testosterone. Now, I did a whole video about this a few years ago, so if you want to know more, you can go watch that. But essentially, the TLDR version is that if baldness is already like something that runs in your family, if you are already predestined sometime in the future to probably start losing your hair, anabolic steroids can kind of speed this up and exacerbate it. Maybe if you were going to lose your hair at 40, it could speed it up so that it starts happening at 35 or maybe even earlier than that. Maybe like 30 or hell, even 25, depending on what you're taking, how long you're taking it, and the quantities, and etc, etc. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still heavily based on your genetics, and there are just some guys who are very lucky and going to have perfectly full heads of hair well into their 60s. I mean, just look at some of these old school bodybuilders like, Tom Platz or Arnold or even Mike Menser towards the end of his life. However, for a lot of other people who may not be as fortunate genetically speaking, if you have someone who, used to have relatively good hair and then seemingly relatively quickly, it seems like their scalp just aged 15 years into the future and their hair is now like twice as thin as it was maybe a few months ago or like a year or two ago, that might be a bit of a red flag. And at least in terms of our spectrum, that's going to push them a bit to the right. Okay, this one is somewhat more anecdotal, but during my research, this just kept on coming up time and time again, so I thought I would mention it. Have you ever seen those bodybuilders? These guys who just persistently look like they just stepped out of the sauna. Like their skin is just perpetually like 3 shades more red than everybody else around them. This is actually called skin flushing, and it could potentially be linked to anabolic steroid usage for a number of reasons, such as just increased blood pressure, increased body temperature, and even increased red blood cell count. Like your body is actually making more or too many red blood cells. This is actually one of the reasons why a lot of bodybuilders will actually try to donate blood as often as they can. They'll go every like 3 or 6 months or whatever the limit is. It's because their hematocrit levels are literally too high, and so they're trying to like offload red blood cells by just donating blood as frequently as they can.